When Jeff Comes Home, Chapter 11. Hey, kiddo, Dad said, shaking me gently awake. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, aware suddenly that something was wrong. What? I asked, choking on the word. Hey, relax, Dad laughed a little, but his eyes were sad. Nothing too awful. The press is outside. I just looked at him. It's nothing like it was in San Francisco, but they're here. They want to see you, and I think we should just get it over with. Talk to them, you mean? Dad nodded. I don't want to, I said, finally awake. I know, but they're not going away until they get a clear shot of you, and he sighed. It's reality. So let's give them one look and then go on about our business, all right? Yeah, whatever, I muttered. Okay then, meet you downstairs. Though we could have left the house through the attached garage, Dad steered me out the front door instead, indicating by pressure that I should stop at the top of the porch steps. I stepped forward another inch, losing Dad's hand off my shoulder, looking out at them. 4 vans, each with television call letters painted on their sides, were parked along the sidewalk outside our lawn. 4 ill-matched sets of people stood near the vans, conferring with each other, well-dressed reporters and their work-suited camera operators. Conspicuously apart from this group was a handful of men and women carrying notepads, tape recorders, and their own cameras. There he is, one of the plainly dressed reporters said, sounding more conversational than excited, and the entire group headed for me. There's a lot of them, I said flatly, scared. Dad squeezed my shoulder again, and this time I deliberately shook him off. A lot of them, Dad agreed quietly, but it's all right. I've handled it. With that, he stepped alongside me, smiling out at everyone, a smile so phony I was surprised to see many of them smile back. Mr. Hart, how do you feel about all this? A blonde woman asked. At 8 in the morning, she was wearing a cocktail dress and high heels. We feel great, of course, Cheryl, Dad said. I looked at him sideways. Cheryl? Our boy is home, Dad continued, smiling at Cheryl, then past her. We couldn't be happier. The television reporters nodded sympathetically while the print reporters scribbled into their notebooks, frowning. Are you glad the guy is in custody? A young athletic woman asked another of the TV reporters. Sure, Dad said, still smiling, his voice tightening just a little. For everyone's sake, let's not talk about him here. Jeff, someone said quietly in the lull that followed. I saw an earnest-looking woman with short gray hair standing on the edge of the print reporter's circle. She smiled at me so genuinely I smiled back. What's the next step for you? She asked. I don't know. I looked at Dad uncertainly. School, I guess. He nodded, clapping his hands once. Well, folks, we've got errands to run, so... Jeff, did the guy molest you? I looked down to the speaker, a pudgy young man dressed in wrinkled chinos and a stained white polo shirt. He waited patiently for my answer, unimpressed by my silence. Dad had a grip on my shoulder again. Thanks, everyone. With that, he guided me down the steps and through the reporters, pointing the remote-control door opener in the general direction of the garage. Dad waited a moment before we pulled out, taking a deep breath, staring down at his hands. Then he backed out slowly, putting on another smile. He rolled down the window as the reporters took their time stepping out of his way. Take care now, he called, raising his hand briefly. Most of the reporters smiled back to him or nodded, though my last interrogator stood glumly in the middle of the road staring after us. Bastards, Dad hissed as we drove around the corner. Chilled by the encounter, unsettled, I hit what seemed to be the safest point. It seemed like you knew them. I do, Dad said, some of them. I put in my time with the press. He looked over at me. They're not all bad, but... He shook his head. All right, we've done that, so... I was silent as we turned onto Wayne's Main Street. Dad glanced at me again. That should hold them for a while, but if anything happens with Slate, anything with the case, they'll be back. Okay, I muttered, folding my arms across my chest, looking down. I might not be here to protect you then. Dad sounded like he was talking to himself. I have to get back to work eventually. Suddenly, unaccountably furious with him, I lashed out. Hey, don't worry about it. You don't have to protect me from anything. He's in jail, isn't he? We were both quiet after that. Then Dad let out his breath in a harsh sigh, his fingers tightening on the steering wheel. Sorry, I said quickly. I shouldn't have said that. He held up a hand without looking at me. It's all right. Dad drove another mile or so to a huge shopping center that had been a cow pasture the last time I'd seen it. Okay, he said briskly once we were in the store. I'll need your help here. Connie's list is 2 pages long. I shuffled along behind him, feeling as out of place as if we'd landed on the moon. We walked through an enormous archway into the store, where Dad nodded toward the carts. He handed me 1 page of the list. Let's each take a cart. You stay near me and look for the things on your list. You see anything you want for yourself, toss it in. He caught my eyes and tried to smile. We've got to get you back to your fighting weight. I let Dad lead me through the store. It was a tedious, deliberate process, as I didn't know where anything was and he constantly had to come back and check my list. Finally, he just took it from me and used my cart as backup. I wanted to get some kind of food for myself to please him, but I didn't see anything that appealed to me. Finally, I grabbed a box of sugar pops and some chocolate chip ice cream, food I had enjoyed as a child. I kept my eyes down, but I sensed a few people staring at me, and I thought I heard some whispers. I ignored them, telling myself I was imagining things, but once Dad and I reached the checkout counter, the game was up. The thin, dark-haired woman checking the groceries was Mary Perini, Vin's mother. Oh my God, is that you? Oh geez, Jeff Hart. Hi, Mary, I said. She ran out from behind the counter, pushed past Dad, and grabbed me. I could see from Dad's face that he was seriously pissed and about to move her off, but I signaled him it was all right. She rocked me side to side, reaching up to kiss my cheek. You're so tall and handsome. Oh, you grew up. You back in town permanent now? I shrugged, bewildered by the question. Vinny's going to be so excited. He missed you so much, never stopped talking about you. Mary clasped me tighter, and I smelled her perfume and powder. It's good to see you, I said, detaching myself gently. How are you? Mary let me go, patting my cheek. I'm fine, honey. The question is, how are you? I'm okay. Out shopping with Dad, huh? She said, punching him lightly on the arm. He did not look happy. We're in a hurry, Mrs. Perini, he told her, gesturing toward the groceries. Mary nodded. Of course. Don't mind me. She scurried back behind the counter and began dragging items over the scanner, talking all the while. You are coming over to see Vinny, aren't you? When I didn't answer, she shook a loaf of bread at me. Don't be shy. You are, or we'll come get you. Her face tightened, and she addressed Dad. Mr. Hart, if it was me, I would have killed that bastard. My face reddening, I moved past Dad to where the groceries were piling up. A plastic sack was already set up in the holder at the end of the counter, and I began grabbing items at random and tossing them in the bag. Oh no, honey, don't you get those, Mary said. I'll call someone. Andy? She screeched over an intercom. Dad winced, and the misery was complete. I recognized the bad boy right away, my grade school enemy, Andy Keller. Though he'd grown up into a giant, Andy's baby face and wiry blonde hair were unmistakable. Hey, he said in a monotone. I nodded to him. Andy and Vin had been best friends when I arrived on the scene in 5th grade. Then, like that, it was Vin and me, and Andy was left out. He had only sneered at Vin's attempt to include him, and finally, Vin had shrugged him off. Andy had made it clear that he hated me, but at the time I didn't much care. I was becoming Mr. Sports Hero, and Andy was just a mean fat guy hanging on at the edges of the jock circle. It was amazing how little any of that mattered now. 16-year-old Andy stood before me, still fat but muscular too, immensely tall, carrying himself with a physical confidence I did not remember. Suddenly, I was sure that Andy had become a major success as a high school athlete and that he and Vin were friends again. He looked me over, curious, then tilted his head back. Where you been? I shrugged, looking down. Andy grunted. Then, with a skill that put my fumblings to shame, he began plucking the groceries up 3 at a time, packing them neatly into paper bags he lined along the counter. Mary, who'd watched our reunion open-mouthed, shook her head and leaned over the counter toward Dad. It's a crime, she said, lowering her voice without dropping the volume. It's just a crime. These faggots that prey on our children, they should be strung up, electrocuted, tortured, like they torture. I told my boys if some pervert ever comes up to them, Mrs. Perini, check the goddamn groceries. Dad's voice was ice cold. Mary drew back, glaring at him. Fine, she said, calling out the total, then practically grabbing the check from his hand. Andy stood by the loaded carts, tapping one foot. I knew my face was bright red. Dad refused Andy's offer to take the groceries out for us. After we had unloaded them, Dad took the carts back while I waited inside the Jeep. I'm sorry, Dad said when he returned. Obviously, I don't do much of the shopping, or I never would have gone there. Did you know that kid from school? Yeah, I mumbled. Andy Keller. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. What she was saying in there, I paused, and the reporter, is that what everyone thinks? Dad waited a long time before he answered. That you were molested? Probably. He started up the Jeep but kept it in park for a moment. Then he sighed and looked behind him, backed out of the spot. I waited for him to say more, edgier than I had been since the night I came home. But we were out of the shopping center, headed up to the highway back to town before Dad spoke again. When a child is kidnapped, he said, sounding as though he were weighing out every word, like you were, the natural assumption is that there's a sexual motive behind it. I knew that from the start, and Dave only confirmed it. I squirmed. Yeah? Well, who's Dave? And what do you mean natural? There's nothing natural about it. I stared down at my hands, curling my toes in embarrassment. Jeff, Dad's voice was gentle. It was the start of something I did not want to face, could not face. No, I said, turning to him for an instant, then looking away fast out the passenger side window. It's not true anyway. It's not true, okay? Okay, Dad said soothingly, placating me. I turned to him again. It's not true, I said, working to control my voice. But if that's what everyone thinks, then what's the point? What do you mean, what's the point? He said, sharp now. I mean, I plowed ahead. I'm supposed to walk around this town, school, with everyone thinking I'm a faggot? Don't use that word, Dad said angrily. Mrs. Perini was talking trash. I don't want you to waste your time listening to people like that. I took a deep breath. Is that what you think about me too? What? He asked me too quickly. He knew. You think I'm a whatever you want me to call it. I saw Dad's knuckles go white on the steering wheel. Never mind, I said, looking away. We drove in silence for a few minutes until I noticed we weren't heading toward home. Where are we going? To pick out a Christmas tree, Dad said with forced cheer. Dad, I started. He glanced over at me, smiling. Look, I feel the same way, but Connie likes to do the Christmas thing. She wants to do something this year, even though we really only have today and tomorrow. I shrugged. I've already had my Christmas, he added, his voice thick with emotion. Feeling utterly cold, I said nothing, staring out the window as we passed the shopping center where Dad used to take us for pizza. The park where I had played Little League baseball for 3 years. The creek where Vin, Charlie, and I had thought we'd found gold once. Dad flipped on his turn signal and turned into the fairgrounds lot. Here, I said, cringing. The last person I wanted to see was Vin. I couldn't remember what hours Connie said he worked. Though I made no effort to move for the door, Dad caught my arm. Jeff, before we go in, why are we here? I said suspiciously. Dad looked confused for a moment. Oh, he said, releasing my arm. There's a Christmas tree lot here, where we usually go. Where we usually go. Jeff's gone and life goes on. Look, Dad said abruptly, what we were talking about before, I don't want to let it drop. He waited until I looked at him. The faggot stuff. No one with any class is going to lay that on you. I don't want you thinking about yourself that way. Who says I do? I challenged him, sounding stronger than I felt. Dad, so strong and confident and maddeningly right all the time, looked helpless. Jeff, don't, I warned. He sighed, then nodded. Okay, let's go buy a Christmas tree.